Welcome to the Mark Divine Show. This podcast is about more than just listening. It's about sparking action and inspiration while transforming yourself, your community, and the world at large. Each episode is designed to help you grow as a leader, break through personal barriers, and make lasting impact. Together, you and your host will explore topics like mental toughness, emotional resilience, purpose, and evolving consciousness, while embracing challenges and facing this fast-changing world. Our guests on the Mark Divine Show are exceptional individuals who offer wisdom from diverse fields, whether it's science, philosophy, leadership, human performance, or psychedelic research. Join us today as we dare to think bigger, live bolder, and unlock the common potential within everyone. Here's your host, Mark Divine.
Hi, this is Mark Divine, and this is the Mark Divine Show. Thanks for joining me today. Super stoked to have you here. On the show, I dive into topics that interest me and hopefully interest you as well. I cover a broad range of things from vertical development, consciousness studies, physical mental toughness, awareness, and other things that are fascinating to me, and also pushing the envelopes on what it means to lead and to be human these days. Today, I'm excited to introduce the topic of intuition, continuing with the series on the 5 mountains of integrated development, which is an aspect of our Unbeatable Mind program. The 5 mountains are the 5 domains or developmental aspects that we all have: physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual. And my position is, or my experience is, that when you train and develop these 5 things or 5 mountains in an integrated manner with, things that you do every day, week, month, and year, then you can greatly accelerate your growth as a human being to higher stages of awareness and of consciousness, deeper connection to others, to nature, to yourself, those types of things. And these are things that we all, or I should say most of us, strive for if you're a growth mindset individual, which you are because you're listening to this podcast. So a couple stories first to get going on this idea of intuition. Once when I was at SEAL Team 3, I was training with my platoon, doing a firearms instruction course, really kind of a refresher. And we always use the crawl, walk, run. And so the very first day, we were going to get up and do a pistol recoil, 25-yard shoot, and then go a little bit deeper, faster after that. And I was the first one heading to the range. It's early in the morning, like 5 a.m. It's cold. And about halfway to the range, I suddenly had this very, very strong sensation that it felt like someone putting a hand on my shoulder, and it sounded like, even though there was no sound, the word stop was being shouted in my ear. And so it was so shocking that I just stopped in my tracks. And as soon as I stopped, a teammate of mine, 25 yards behind me, had an accidental discharge as he was pulling his weapon out of his holster, and the bullet whizzed right by my right ear. Like I could feel the wind as it blasted by my ear. Had I not had that intuitive, punch right there at that time to stop in my tracks, that bullet would have gone right in the back of my head. Amazing. So that's an example of instinctual intuition or gut intuition, which I'm going to talk more about in a second. Second story, I remember I was in Kodiak, Alaska with my team, same team, and we were traversing. It's getting dark and it's snowy, and this whole crevasse had kind of opened up on the right side, and we weren't roped in. And I started to get this spidey sense that things were not going to go well if I didn't stop and rope in. And right when I was starting to have that sensation, which was also like an instinctual, intuitive hit, I could feel in my heart this intense fear that was not mine. Like it was this intense energy. And as soon as I felt that energy, I saw a teammate of mine named Swanson just slip and start to lose control. And he shouted my name, actually, my nickname, Cyborg. And so that energy that I felt in the heart was so compelling that it literally launched me out of my tracks, and I just leapt toward this guy who started racing toward this crevasse, and I was able to get there and leap on him and we tumbled a bit, and then I was able to dig my ice axe into the snow, and we came to a screeching halt about 2 feet from the 600-foot drop-off. That was an example of what I call emphatic intuition or heart intuition, where you feel strongly the energy of another human being. And this can be from quite a distance as well. And then, of course, whether you act on it or not is really kind of the crux of this discussion about intuition. And last, I tell a story in my book, The Way of the Seal, a little bit also in my book, Uncommon, where we dive deeply into these 5 mountains. Sitting on a meditation bench under the watchful eye of my Zen master in my early 20s, I began to experience imagery in my mind just spontaneously show up. And it was imagery of like me doing warrior things, like it was warrior imagery. It was more like also a sensation that I was meant to be a warrior. And at the time, I was working toward being a certified public accountant, and I was working at Coopers & Lybrand in a consulting role, and so I was far from a warrior. That's an example of what I call insight intuition. It comes through direct perception or perceiving something in your mind, in your brain, that you didn't necessarily know, right? It's coming from a different source. And that source could be your soul, or it could be some transrational information, right? So we'll talk about that. So I've just talked about 3 different types of intuition. There's a lot of misunderstanding about what intuition is, and a lot of overlap with the discussion about emotionality and sensation. So I want to just take about 15 minutes here and kind of like parse through it and see if we can get any clarity. Now, back to the 5 mountains. The 5 mountains are physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual, and they are listed in that order for a reason. Largely, most of the work, I should say, is done in the first 3 mountains. Physical, healing the body, refining the body through somatic awareness, through stress management, proper nutrition, sleep, exercise, all those things, strengthening the body and developing more courage with the body is really important, because that allows the sensations of the body to be experienced with more clarity, or with more fidelity, with more sensitivity. So then the work of the mental mountain is to clarify the mind, strengthen the mind, develop the ability to hold your attention and to concentrate more, and also to expand the capacity of the mind to work both cross-hemispheric, right, or more an integrated left-right hemisphere, as well as to tap into the intelligence of your heart mind and your gut mind, which both have neurons and neurological processing and neurochemicals and whatnot. So we get to, through the mental mountain, train what I call whole mind thinking. And whole mind thinking then allows you to, in the work of the 3rd mountain, through emotional development, because you've done the work of purifying and strengthening and making the body more aware, more sensitive, with whole mind thinking, now you're thinking with your whole body, or using your whole body as part of your thinking. And so you're able to perceive both sensations and the interpretations of those sensations more clearly. And so a good chunk of those sensations and interpretations we call emotions. And emotions, as we discussed in our last 2 episodes, really are about stored energy, primordial energy that is going, that is designed to keep you safe, right? So fear is a great example of that. Also, the energies of the subtle body that are going to, lead to ultimately you experiencing peace and equanimity and joy and those types of things.
If you love almost impossible challenges, you've got great ambitions and unrelenting drive, and you love adventure, then guess what? You're not alone. I do too. And those of us who have those qualities also continuously strive for more. We refuse to stay where we are. For us, there's a vehicle called the Defender, engineered to meet challenges head on. The Defender family includes the Defender 90, the 110, and 130 models, each designed to exude confidence and capability. Whether you're exploring rugged terrain or navigating city streets, the Defender is fully equipped for 21st century adventures. With features like 3D surround cameras and clear sight rear view, you've got unparalleled visibility and control. The Defender 130 with its 8 seats offers ample space for family and friends to join your journey. Robust materials and modern design ensure durability and performance, making every drive an adventure. Explore with confidence, knowing you have the capability to tackle any path. So, if you're ready to embrace the impossible, explore the full Defender lineup at LandRoverUSA.com. LandRover USA.com. Design your adventure today with the Defender. Winners don't make resolutions. Resolutions break. Instead, they just start and then maximize momentum. When the goal is health span, or being able to live better for longer, there are a few non-negotiables. One of them is quality. When it comes to supplements geared toward high performance, no one does it better than Momentous. They invest in NSF certification, meaning every batch is tested for heavy metals, harmful additives, and label claim accuracy. It's the reason they're trusted by 32 NFL teams and collegiate sports teams and dietitians all over the country. Trusting research and their ecosystem of experts over fads means not offering every supplement on the market. Other brands do that. Instead, Momentous believes in nailing the basics with bone-crushing consistency and then curating an intentional routine based on your individual goals. And by basic, we mean protein and creatine. Momentous sources CreaPure, the purest form of creatine monohydrate available. It's an absolute must for both men and women for peak physical and cognitive performance. To learn more, go to livemomentous.com. Try them today at 20% off with the code DIVINE, D-I-V-I-N-E. Again, Live Momentous, LIVEMOMENTOUS.com. Start living on purpose with Momentous today.
Where does intuition come in? Where does that fall in? Well, intuition are also overlap with sensations. So you have this sensation of the heart's intuition or emphatic intuition, which is very much of a physical sensation, but it's not necessarily an emotion in the classic sense of how we define emotions, where you have an interpretation around a particular feeling that gets triggered or activated. Whereas an intuition from the heart's empathic center, intuitive center, is going to be picking up on somebody else's energy. And the heart has the ability to project energy or information for a long distance. And so you can actually pick up the energy of either a group or an individual from quite far away if your heart is open to it and you're able to receive it and understand or maybe appreciate the energy and to be able to interpret it somehow. So that's the heart intuition. And then same thing with the gut. The gut, as I mentioned, they call it the little brain. The gut has neurological processing power. It's got neurons. And we don't quite understand how it works, but the biome, all those little bugs in your gut, communicate with us constantly. And of course, they're worried about their survival. So the gut instinctual intuition really is about recognizing danger because your biome is going to recognize certain danger like in an instant, well before your conscious mind will ever recognize it, if ever. For some reason, it's able to just pick up this information and transmit it to you. So if you're not open enough to receive that, or you don't believe it, then you won't receive it, or you won't act on it. And in that case, it could be life-threatening. So for instance, back to my shooting example, had I poo-pooed it, had I not believed in these things, I would be dead. There's many other times where, in less dangerous situations, where I ignored it, and I paid a price for that. And so I've learned to always pay attention to the signals from my gut as well as my heart. As far as the direct perception of insight, this is something that really accrues more from being able to be still. So a long practice of meditation, spending a lot of time in nature and learning how to be still and just silence the chatter of your mind so you can move beyond the thinking and the emotions and just rest in that stillness. And in that stillness, you're able to perceive and receive messages either from within, what you consider to be within your body, and that could be like from your heart itself, like your soul, the soul seated in the heart, or what we could call, and I used the term earlier, trans-rational, meaning it could be coming from outside of you. It could be like the thoughts of another person you're picking up, which you might also call extrasensory perception, or it might even be a message from a non-physical being who is a supporter of you, right? So if you believe in that type of thing, which I do. So that's really what happens with intuition. It's similar. It has similarities with emotions in the sense that they are sensations in your body. They arise within the body, or they come from outside the body but are received and interpreted through the body, because the body is your interpretation machine. And most people don't learn how to develop these three intuitional centers, the instinctual, emphatic, and insightful. In fact, if you do a Google search or an AI search on intuition, you're going to find that most academic views on intuition really are about pattern recognition, like the complexity theory. You've been experienced to a situation or environment or other people for over long periods of time, and all that information gets kind of stored in your subconscious, and then suddenly it's able to be put together in a certain way for you at a moment when you need it. So that's I think that's also appropriate to call intuition, but it's a little bit different than my interpretation of the three different intuition centers in my experiences. I would more call that just pattern recognition. And it's just the way your brain works. And Daniel Kahneman, in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, calls that interpretation of those things a system two thinking. System two thinking is the rational interpretation of what's happening from system one, which is your subconscious mind. So the more experience you have, the more mastery you have with something, the more time you have with an individual, living together, working together, then the more your system two mind, I think I've got that right, is going to be able to interpret complex patterns that have built up over time. So we can also call that intuition, but we'll call it pattern recognition intuition. So where do we go with all this? How do we train it? Well, I mentioned before, most of the work of the intuitive mountain training comes from or as a result of the work of the first three mountains. So as you work on yourself physically and mentally and emotionally, and you've got daily practices around the development of those three mountains, then what's happening is you're getting more and more, your body's getting purer and purer, and your mind is getting much more clear and able to listen to and receive the signals and discern where they're coming from. And you're clearing up a lot of emotional energy to be able to feel more. You're letting the energy flow in your body, so you're able to feel more, which allows you to feel the sensations, the very, very subtle energy of your intuitive centers. So if you don't do that work, largely, intuition can be largely cut off or shut off from you. So it could be said that we ultimately will open up naturally to our capacity to experience intuition and actually more creativity as a result of working on ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally, and reintegrating and becoming more of a whole mind thinker. But there are certain things that we can also do to stimulate our capacity to perceive and interpret our intuition, right? So here's a few of the ones that I used to work with my SEALFIT academies. One of them from the Apache tradition, we would call the fox walk. So in the Apache tradition, or any native tradition, of course, hunting is important skill. And they learned very early on that you can't stalk a deer with your mind in an agitated state or by focusing on the deer. And so the hunters or the warriors would take a lot of time to clear their mind and clear their energy out of their body, clear any agitation or anxiety. And that's through a process of just sitting in nature, sitting in silence. And then they would go stalk the deer. And so when they got close to the deer, and when I say close, I mean far enough away where the deer's not going to detect them or smell them or anything. And of course, they're all camouflaged as well as with smell as well as sight. But then they would deliberately not look at the deer, and they would use what I call wide-angle vision, right? Wide-angle vision, which makes sure the energy kind of flow into your mind instead of coming out your eyes with the focus vision. So they soften their gaze, go wide-angle vision. They don't look directly at the deer. And then they slow their breathing down, and they breathe in a very, very slow, deliberate nostril manner, like our tactical breathing. And they do something called fox walk. And the fox walk, you ever seen a fox stalk its prey? When it gets closer, it just walks like ridiculously slow before it then pounces when it gets close enough. So a fox walk literally is like taking one step per minute with that soft gaze, breathing very, very slow through your nostrils. Now, this practice is incredible. I used to do it for like 30 to 40 minutes at a time with the students, and it gets you into an incredible flow state. Your brain settles down into an alpha wave length, and you can ultimately learn how to walk without making any sound, even if you're stepping over twigs and leaves. And that's how the Apache scouts and the other scouts could approach a deer and literally touch it. It's incredible. So what a fun exercise. I encourage you to try it sometime in your living room. I wouldn't do it out in public. I used to do that with the group at SealFit, where we'd be fox walking down the street, and boy, did we get some interesting looks back then. So that's one. Another one is, just the practice of mindfulness, right? So we've talked about mindfulness is helpful in the mental mountain development so that you can develop distance from your thinking. But mindfulness is also about body awareness. And so you can develop the mindfulness just to pay attention to the sensations in your body and begin to identify where they're coming from. Is it an emotion, or is it just a physical sensation that maybe has no meaning, or is it maybe coming from your gut or your heart? So using mindfulness with the directed attention toward your body and the body's sensations and feelings and energy is a really, really powerful way to really open up those intuitive centers. In addition, just spending more time in nature, right? Just immersing yourself in nature. So if you go out for a hike, for example, instead of being so destination-oriented, like I've got to get to the destination, or being time-bound oriented, where you've got to get there in a certain time, or you got to be the first one to get to the top, or anything that's ego, goal-oriented, just set all that aside and just enjoy really just observing everything that you can see, taking more information in, taking time to just sit and let your mind kind of settle and sink into an environment and just notice what happens, right? Generally, we barge through nature environments, and, the animals, big and small, can smell us from a long distance, and they can hear us from a long distance away, so that most generally, they're going to get out of your way. That's why you don't see a ton of animals when you go, lunging up a trail. But if you can learn to be very quiet, either sitting or walking, then you'll notice that the animals will come back out, or they won't be scared. I remember once I was at a yoga retreat or meditation retreat up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I went for a hike. This is at the Mount Madonna Training Center, and they have like 400 acres, beautiful acres in the redwoods. And I'm practicing, not the fox walk, but practicing kind of wide-angle vision, deep breathing, really clearing my mind, just more of a mindful walk. And I came upon a family of deer, and they did not bolt when they saw me. They felt very comfortable because I was in a state of open-hearted, open-minded awareness, and I looked at them as my friends, and I wanted to hang out with them. So I just stopped and hung out with them for a little bit. Suddenly, they all looked up the trail in the opposite direction and then bolted. And I sat there and said, they must, have heard or smelled someone coming. And sure enough, about 30 seconds later, down the hill and around the corner come a couple people who are just jabbering away. So that's an example of non-mindful hiking, what they were doing, and versus what I was doing. So that type of nature immersion with a clear mind, with no goal, you just want to be immersed and feel into it and open your heart, is a phenomenal way to really open up your intuitive centers and to be able to experience the power of that intuition. And related to this also is sitting in silence in general, like a silent retreat. So if you were to go to like a 10 or 11 day Vipassana silent retreat, or anything really, anything more than than 24 hours. Right? Even 24 hours is great if you just want to start there. But any time where you just sit in silence, whether in a nature setting or in a temple or kind of a retreat center setting, it's a phenomenal way to, again, settle the mind, let the dust settle of that monkey mind, let your emotions settle, let all the anxiety and agitation from everyday busyness kind of bleed off. And then within 48 hours and longer, you're able to tap into the intuitive centers and be able to experience, some of the messaging that's coming through. One last thing, you can also, and this is really relates mostly to the pattern recognition, intuition that we talked about, but you can practice the art of noticing. This is something that we did in SEAL teams. For instance, we had a couple exercises. One we called the Kim game, keep in memory, which is interesting because this had a two-part kind of benefit to it. So we would take a bunch of little random items, put them on on the ground or on a table and cover them up, and then we would uncover it for a SEAL in training, or even when we were doing this with our platoon, just to stimulate our mental mountain. And we'd uncover it, and you'd have 1 minute to observe everything that's on the table and to try to memorize it, and then would get covered again, and then you'd have to recite back what you saw. And initially, you're just looking at the gross objects and say, oh, I saw a watch, or I saw a compass. But the more skilled you get at this, the more you learn to notice details. And so it's not, oh, I saw a watch. What you say is, oh, I saw a Casio watch and the time was 2:15. Or I saw a compass, a plastic compass, and it was pointing at, 316 degrees or something like that. So you begin to notice much more. So that's one way to practice noticing. Another would be, this is common for sniper teams, or special activities, kind of recon teams, is to travel the same route over and over. And each time you travel it, notice something different and unique that you hadn't seen before. So you're taking the time to really scan and look for details that you may not have seen before, and just adding and adding your ability. You're opening the aperture, I should say, of your ability to be able to recognize the vast amount of information that is actually already flowing into your brain. So we know that your brain takes in millions of bits of information, and yet you can only really perceive, like a few thousand bits at a time. So by practicing noticing, you can expand the aperture and be able to make sense and to perceive more information. So there's some valuable information or valuable tips for how to develop and open up to your natural intuition. So I hope you can practice some of those and find them valuable.
I'm often on the move, traveling for business, speaking engagements, or other projects. But with the rise of online threats, protecting my digital footprint has become more important. To do that, I rely on NordVPN. NordVPN is a game changer for me. Not only does it allow me to securely access content from anywhere, but also protects my sensitive data like bank details and passwords. Whether I'm streaming my favorite show or watching live sports that aren't available in my region, NordVPN ensures I can do so without buffering or lag. A feature I appreciate a lot is called threat protection. This shields me from viruses and malware and phishing sites, giving me peace of mind when using public Wi-Fi. Plus, with NordVPN, I can save money by purchasing flights and subscriptions from countries with better deals. What's impressive is that one NordVPN account can secure up to 10 devices, making it a cost-effective solution for premium cybersecurity. And with this blazing fast speed, I can work seamlessly without interruption. So, if you're ready to safeguard your digital life like I am, visit nordvpn.com/markdivine. Again, nordvpn.com/markdivine, MARKDIVINE. Go there and check out the discounts on NordVPN plan. You'll receive extra 4 months on their 2-year plan. And with their 30-day money-back guarantee, there's no risk. The link is also available in the episode description box. As a high achiever, you're no stranger to setting ambitious goals. But I'm also sure that you deal with the ups and downs of momentum and motivation, especially when it comes to dealing with caffeine. I used to find myself struggling with that mid-morning energy dip and jitters from coffee, which would derail my focus and productivity. However, everything got better when I discovered Nandaka by Peak. Nandaka is more than just a coffee alternative. It's a strategic tool for peak performance. Each creamy, spiced cacao cup delivers a flow state that's unmatched, thanks to its blend of prebiotics, probiotics, and functional mushrooms. These ingredients not only sharpen my focus, but also help manage stress and boost my metabolism. What sets Nandaka apart is its commitment to quality. Peak uses only the finest fruiting body mushrooms, avoiding mycelium and grains to ensure maximum potency. Additionally, the inclusion of up to 30% cacao butter enhances nutrient absorption, making every sip count. Since incorporating Nandaka into my daily routine, I've experienced a significant increase in productivity. I'm consistently meeting my objectives and maintaining energy throughout the day, and noticing improvements in my overall well-being. It's a game changer for anyone seeking to maintain peak performance. So if you're ready to take your morning ritual to the next level and get your productivity on track, visit peaklife.com, peakuelife.com/divine. You'll receive an exclusive 20% off plus a free starter kit. Again, peaklife.com/divine. Upgrade your morning ritual with Nandaka and experience the difference for yourself.
Developing intuition is an important skill as we head into this artificial intelligence age of exponential technology and VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. I think, the human skills of intuition and creativity and empathy and compassion, these things are going to be the most valuable skills for us in the future. And yet our whole setup of schooling, academia, and even developmental programs are pretty much devoid of the type of training, for the corporate world or for leadership development that is going to develop those skills. You will find it in Eastern traditions of meditation and yoga. You will find it in some other types of programs, but they're not mainstream. So I'm here to suggest that you need to kind of bring these into mainstream. If you're a leader, bring them into your life or bring them into your organization so that you can begin to really open up the aperture to help your team be more intuitive and more creative, have that more access to spontaneous knowingness of direct perception, transrational knowledge, and so be more capable as a human being as AI takes over some of those other horizontal jobs. One last thing, there are some other types of intuition to be aware of. I don't know if there's not much you can do about it except pay attention and learn to see if how it affects you. But one of them is archetypal intuition. So this is like, we talked a little bit about Carl Jung yesterday. There are kind of cultural archetypes that exist. And oftentimes we can find that we are involved in the energy of a cultural archetype ourselves, or that we have a particular archetype that we're kind of playing out karmically. And so if you can really tap into that, for instance, when I was meditating in my 20s, I kept having that sensation that I was a warrior. Well, that was an archetype. So the warrior is a very strong archetype. So I had to ask, is this something I'm tapping into, or is this something that is supposed to be, my energy or my life arc? And that's what I determined that it was. Like I was meant to be a warrior, and yet in my 20s, I was not a warrior. So that's an example of archetypal intuition. Another would be genetic, right? So ancestral intuition. And this would be like to take a look at your ancestors and get a sense for like what are the guiding energies? What are the dominant energies that went through the lineages, and to notice whether you've got any of that energy in your life. And a lot of times you'll see that there's some ancestral kind of nudge or information that you can use to your advantage, or it helps give you some insight. The other way genetic intuition plays out is through like birth order, right? And so, and there's plenty of research on this, but if you're firstborn, you're going to have a certain type of framework that you're fitting into when it comes to other people's perceptions, and you're also background of obvious is perception of how you're supposed to fulfill that role. Same thing with second, third, or fourth. Those aren't ironclad, but there's some valuable information there as well. Okay, at any rate, there you go. The power of intuition is undeniable. It saved my life and led to some incredible adventures as I learned to follow up on it, on my warrior intuition and become a Navy SEAL, and then follow up my intuition to start SEAL Fit and to develop the training programs that have led to all of this work. So I encourage you to really explore your intuition, your empathic intuition, your instinctual intuition, your insightful intuition, your pattern recognition intuition, as well as your genetic and ancestral archetypal intuition. Thanks for joining me today, once again, on the Mark Divine Show. Show notes will be up at markdivine.com. What else? Video will be on our YouTube channel. And if you're not on my newsletter subscription list, go to markdivine.com to subscribe. Divine Inspiration comes out every Tuesday with show notes from the week's podcast. Incredible blog, a useful blog, I should say, hopefully. Some practice for you to try, as well as notes from some of our sponsors. So check it out. People love it. I hope you will too. If you haven't rated or reviewed the show, please do so wherever you listen, because it's very helpful for people to find it. Shooting for 5,000 5-star reviews this year, so any support there, thanks so much. Amazing shout out to my awesome team, John Dahlgren, Jet Studios, Catherine Devine, Hoo-yah, you guys rock. Thanks so much for all your support. Couldn't do it without you. So that's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Please share the Mark Divine Show with your friends if you find it valuable, and keep coming back. Thanks for doing the work, and till next time, go work on that intuition. Hoo-yah, Divine out.